o'clock here, so we can get the committee of the whole underway. So the question through the staff, any additions to the agenda here? Okay, no, it's all good. So approval of the agenda as presented. Councillor Croft moving, seconded.
Second.
Councillor Dival seconded. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting from June 11th. Okay, Councillor Croft moving.
I'll second.
Councillor Erickson seconding. Questions or comments pertaining to minutes? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Accurate minutes again. Good work, staff. Item 4, cannabis. Rolling right along, so to speak. And as the public and as council will be aware, we had some discussions on this issue beforehand, and the commitment from council was that we would talk about this late August and just decide on steps forward. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in this particular topic, and I guess it would be council's, the question would be, how do we consult the public and see what kind of sentiment there is within the community. And we had obviously a very articulate and vocal group that attended our public hearing pertaining to the temporary cannabis prohibition. And so I guess the purpose of this meeting is to decide on the steps forward as to how we consult the public and see what the wish of the community is. So open it up for council discussion. Councillor Croft.
Thanks. So for myself personally, I'm not a pot smoker, nor do I intend to be one. But I do believe that the fact of the matter is that the retail sector will be providing that option for people in the very near future, of course. And so, you know, we may or may not decide to have retail outlets in our community, depending on what bylaws we create for that. But the thing about it is it's going to come. And, you know, I'd like to be prepared for things that are coming, for sure. And one thing I'd like to be prepared about is, you know, we need the bylaw enforcement. For example, that's going to be one thing. If we have, or if we don't have a store in our community, we're going to see people smoking this stuff in the community. So the bottom line is that we have to be prepared. We have to have, you know, they could come from Yale or wherever, whatever community. They could come and visit family and, you know, have it. It'll be legal. So we have to be prepared and able to cope with it. So I think that, for one thing, I would prefer to see the product in our community, if it's in our community, in the hands of responsible retailers that are prepared to go that extra mile and do what they're supposed to do. And I think that that's an important consideration. So we do, sounds like we do have some people in the community that are interested in being responsible and enforcing our bylaws and policies. And so if that's the case, then I'm really quite open to that kind of a discussion. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Croft. So just a question through the staff now, Mr. Forlosky or Ms. Bellingham, whoever has the answer here. The provincial regulations, is there an update on when they're going to be coming out for us to review?
Your Worship, no. They should be out clearly before the end of October, but I will send a hastener tomorrow and just try to find out where they're at. The general principles are out, but it's the devil's always in the detail.
Yeah. So within the package that staff provided here for the committee of the whole meeting, there was a survey from the Abbotsford, City of Abbotsford community, and also from Clinton. So that was kind of a nice, diverse look at what some communities are doing to investigate this particular subject.
That's correct, Your Worship. We thought it probably makes the best sense, if council so wishes, to sample public opinion here at Hope on a variety of issues dealing with the retail sale of cannabis and other cannabis-related products. And as you can see from the prepared copies of the opinion polls used by other municipalities, they're quite involved and they're quite wide-ranging. As discussed, it could involve bylaw, business licensing, zoning. There could even be building code changes as a result. And simple questions that seem simple, but the answers aren't. How many retailers do you want in the district? How many, how close should they be? Where should they be? These are all important issues that council will have to tackle.
So I guess the question would be, once we put together a survey form or public opinion form, I think it's important that we get it out to the public in a very fair fashion. Would it be possible to have a sort of a numbered ballot system where you get one per household or what have you, so that, folks of whatever predisposition can't just photocopy 20 and throw in 20 of the same or what have you, so there's some sort of integrity to the process?
That's a valid concern, Your Worship, and certainly Ms. Bellingham and I will look at that. If council so wishes and directs us to create an opinion poll like that, our control measures to ensure that it fairly represents the opinion of all folks eligible to give feedback via this opinion. So whether they be citizens of Hope, landowners of Hope, property owners, yet to be determined. We'll have to come back to council with a draft if you wish, and we can answer or get those questions answered.
Okay. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Daigle.
So I guess my question would be, on April 18th, 2018, the UBCM posted or printed out a guide, the municipal guide to cannabis, and it includes the draft bylaw as well as draft policies. I'm just curious, what are we waiting for from the province? Also, the Liquor Distribution Board has posted their applications, and people can now apply to be recreational retail sales of cannabis. The province, I don't see them waiting on anything. So maybe I'm misunderstanding this data, but the municipal guide to cannabis is ready, available, and accessible by anyone who wishes to read it.
So I think that the question is, in the hypothetical, we already have a half dozen people, organizations that want to be distributors of recreational cannabis. So if we were to say, okay, let's go, pay your business license fee, whatever we decide, go for it. Is it still currently illegal within BC to sell recreational cannabis till the province gives us final?
It is, until, I think it's Bill
Until
244 October with the federal legislation.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Dowd?
Yeah, I appreciate going out to the public and doing a survey. I think having a wider net to gather input from the community as to how they want to see this distributed. As well, I agree. You have a bylaw, and how do you enforce that if you only have one bylaw officer? There's a lot of details in which, we need to think through when it comes to implementing something of this nature. I don't know if it's something that can be done on the day of the election, as well as have surveys there, opinion polls there. You can't.
It's not part of the election process.
No, okay.
So you would have to separate that.
Okay, yeah. Just thinking if you got people coming out already.
Yeah.
No, okay. But I do like the fact of going out and getting some, casting that wider net into the community.
Okay, Councillor Mendel?
Thank you. I do like Abbotsford's survey. It's much better than the one from Clinton. They got some interesting feedback, but I just think the layout of it is there, and I feel like it's almost something you could just cut and paste and change to Hope and use. So I think staff time on getting that out should be fairly quick. I do like that Clinton used that Survey Monkey, so you could go online and just click away and get it done. I don't know how Abbotsford had theirs set up for responding. But that's one question I had, is how do you verify that the people responding are from the District of Hope? I guess you could add that question, or verify names or something against a list.
Well, ideally, if you're doing a survey, it would be anonymous. So more people would be apt to complete the survey without attaching their name to it. A lot of people don't want to be tied to an opinion.
So you'll never really know.
toward this. Yeah.
Okay. Clinton had that question, do you live within the village or do you live outside the village? But
And I can still make it
helps make
anonymous,
some.
but
Yeah.
you're relying on
You're getting a little
honesty.
bit more, hopefully, correct answers. And maybe a question to add would be, do do you support additional costs of increased by law enforcement, just so people realize that there could be a net increase in taxation, not just for this, but that could be an effect of it. So Abbotsford lays out a timeline in it, like it's a good document, and I think if we send something like this out, it should be very similar, and they started off at the end of June, and they finish up in September with finalized recommendations and bylaw updates. So looking at a similar timeline, knowing that we have a lot less data to compile from surveys just because our population is so much less, I think that we could probably get something out. I'm hoping that you can confirm that we could get something out sort of mid-September, very similar to this survey, and have the whole process completed by, at the very latest, the end of November, which doesn't put us too far behind the October 17th date. So that's what I'd like to see happen. Yeah, that's my thought. I think that this council is definitely in favor of at least getting more information from the community to see specifically about distances from schools, parks, other shops, number of shops, those kind of things. I still think it's quite positive, and everybody's talking about moving forward. They're not looking at continuing with the prohibition. They even use good language. I think the Clinton one used pretty good language. No, maybe not. Maybe it was the Abbotsford one. Where they talked about why this is happening and where they're at with the process, explaining that it's currently prohibited and will be so until such time as the bylaws are in place. So I think using that same language again is good, and should be able to get something like this up pretty quick.
Yeah. It's important to note, however, that there are distributorships in Abbotsford, and some of their bylaw fines are in the 6 figures. And some of them pay it because it's a very lucrative business. So although it's prohibited, there are people out there that are selling regardless of regulations. So I don't know quite how that works with the local city of Abbotsford police and so on and so forth, but I guess they're doing it regardless. Councillor Erickson.
Yeah, so I've been thinking quite a bit about this for hope. And I know the BC government has put out their suggested guidelines, but if the District of Hope is going to go ahead with this, we should be proactive in our bylaws and put them in effect. Write them up as quick as we can before this goes into effect, so we're not working from behind. And I like this survey that Abbotsford had. I really like that. And I don't know if we can copy it, but we could probably form and see if we could use some of it. And then see what the community actually comes up with. Myself, I'll never use it. I can't see it ever being healthy. And you look back at the history of smoking, so smoking used to be used as a medical device to cure a lot of lung problems. And, that's right, you go back in history and you read it, they used to do it. So did strychnine, used to cure a lot of problems. But so you go back and look, and I'm thinking 20 years from now we're going to be really wondering how healthy this really is. Sure, some of the oils might be good, and people say they are. But as far as the smoking part of it, I think we're going to be really seeing some problems down the road as far as the medical problems. People's ability to think clearly and use their actual reasoning power, you're going to see it diminish. Talked to a psychiatrist on this, and he said, give it 20 years and we'll be regretting what we've done. The medical industry will not be able to afford to house all these people that are, especially from a young age. Older ages is different. Older ages, it's a different story, but young age is very detrimental to reasoning and their ability to think clearly. I said it before in this meeting, and I'll say it again. We can legalize it, but we can't make it healthy. I guess that's my mistake.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Erickson. Councillor Medlock.
That's one thing I meant to point out and didn't, that's really important to me, is that this whole survey that Abbotsford has is specifically talking about the legalization of non-medical cannabis. And that's really what that October 17th date's about, is recreational use, not medicinal use. And I think that we need to have a very clear distinction there. I think that medical cannabis is something that is sold through current channels, and maybe they'll change where that's through pharmacies and whatnot. If people choose to use recreational cannabis to self-medicate, that's up to them. But that's a different topic than recreational use or non-medical cannabis legalization. So that's specifically what I think our bylaws will refer to. Not to you make mention of health or any of that, because that's out of the topic. It's specifically the sale of non-medical cannabis and paraphernalia. And I think in one of the surveys they may mention, which I don't know if it's true or not, that certain oils will be allowed. Because in the initial federal government release, they said that does not include oils, but they may mention that it did have certain oils. So, and that's important to me, that it's specific to non-medical cannabis and recreational use.
Okay. Well, I guess, obviously getting a solid footing on what the overall public opinion on this matter is very important. I am keen on making sure that the majority of the opinion we get is, the majority of the opinions that we retrieve are from local residents, because although opinions of those that live in Chilliwack, Agassiz, what have you, they're important to those councils. I think the local people should obviously have a say in what happens in our community. And if this survey is to have meaning of any sort, I think it is important there's some sort of a vetting process so that people that vote here, they can only vote once in the survey, and that it's not just a free-for-all of people of whatever view, be it for or against or in between, what have you. They can't just get 60 of their buddies to send in the same opinion, and then all of a sudden it skews the survey results. Because if there's opportunity for that, then we might as well just do whatever we feel as a council, because there's no integrity to the process. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. It has to be meaningful, and it has to represent the actual opinion of. It's not a sort of referendum on this per se, but there should be some sort of integrity to the process. Otherwise, it's just photocopy as many sheets as you want, send them in, and hope your side wins kind of deal. So that's my concern if we don't get this right. Councillor Stewart?
I do think we need to make it really clear, this is not a debate about the legalization of cannabis. It is already done, and that whether we allow retail sales in this community or not, people will access it. They will use it. So saying no to the retail sales of cannabis is more of an economic decision for the community rather than a choice for or against cannabis. They will get it, they are getting it, as long as I've lived in Hope, there have been retail sales of cannabis. They just haven't been advertised or marketed. So it's here, and I think that we need to get our heads above water and realize that stalling, surveys, whatever, is not going to stop people from smoking pot. It's going to happen. There have been seminars ever since the federal government announced they were going to legalize cannabis. There have been seminars after seminars after seminars about it, and we've done nothing. And now we sit here today, a month and a half away from the legalization, looking at a survey. I'm sorry, but I think that we need to get on the boat. My personal opinion is that a committee needs to be struck. I looked at the committees that we currently have in place, and over the past 4 years, we have yet to see one committee report. But I've seen them. None of them seem to fit this dynamic of looking at retail sales of cannabis in the District of Hope. And I think that we need to strike a committee that specifically looks at this issue and include people, key players, like our Economic Development Society, have them at the table. This is an economic decision. This is not about the legalization of marijuana. That's done.
Well, I think we all get that. That we certainly don't need an update on that. We all get that. But the issue is, how many dispensaries will we have in our community?
And a committee could decide that.
But I think it's policy. I think we have to set up the policy in our district, so we have decent bylaws that fit the needs of this community. I think that's the key, because I know.
And that could
it's
be
gonna
done at
happen.
the committee level.
Can I just make?
Yeah.
So it's no different than the liquor distribution branch, where they have so many liquor stores or liquor retail sales within a community. So I see that this is no different. So how many cannabis stores will there be in the community, how close will they be to schools, how close will they be to, you know, wherever. So I don't disagree with you, Councillor Stu, and there needs to be some action on that. I still think that having the public opinion, because there was not that many folks at the public hearing, I wasn't at the public hearing, but how many folks were at the public hearing when this came about?
Do we have a number on that?
Yeah, it was really small.
Yeah. So, I mean, still, you have 50 people out of a population of 6,000, people haven't had their voices heard, and I think that, you know, we need to have an opportunity for people to weigh in on it, because there is gonna be, sure, there's an economic benefit on one end, but there's also gonna be a cost on the other end of it. So we need to look at both of that.
And I think putting the bylaws in place to fit that is what we really, fit the community needs. If we put bylaws in place that don't even fit the community needs, we're just wasting our time. So I think we need to have, it's going to, I mean, it's legal. You just read all it up. It's gonna be legal, and it's gonna be legalized October 17th. So it's coming. We should put our bylaws in place ahead of time so we know how it fits the community, for the community.
Yeah. Councilor.
Thanks. Since other communities are a bit ahead, like, I do regret that we didn't start this process sooner as well, councillors do. I guess it just sort of came upon us before we knew it. But I wish we had started sooner, even sooner than Abbotsford did. But there's clearly lots of communities that are in the same situation that have already done some feedback from their community and formed bylaws. So I think that those are probably going to put out the legal test. We could probably, again, with the plan all along this year is to steal and build some of the language. Things that can change would be distances and numbers, but we could probably start to get all that ready to go alongside waiting for this information to come in, and then having it compiled and go back at it, just so that we're not that far behind, so we don't have to start from scratch once this survey is completed. So that's kind of the angle I'd like to see happen, is to start forming those bylaws sort of parallel to doing some research to inform the bylaws.
Do you have a copy of the bylaw template?
I've seen it on that, the federal government's
Would you like
legalization
it?
guide.
I can send you a copy.
No, I have a copy. I've got that whole brochure that downloaded on my iPad. Yeah.
The municipal guide too.
It's got everything in there from provincial, federal, municipal, and who,
Case studies.
for what. Yep.
Yeah, issued April 18th.
Yeah, I've read most of that.
So the question remains, is there a mechanism to not have a formal sort of, this is not a referendum, obviously, it is legal, but to get an opinion poll that is accurate and that allows a resident to put a single opinion in based on the questionnaire, and that they can photocopy, send in 50 different, to make the survey meaningful and to represent the actual public opinion of the 98.5% of people we haven't heard from yet. How do we do that is a question from an admin point of view.
Your worship, if we come back, you're correct. They have to have two things, reliability and validity. So if we come back and if it's your recommendation that we prepare an opinion poll, we'll obviously have an answer to that question. I think there always is a risk, and even in the polls that we looked at, again, SurveyMonkey, mailing it out, you could photocopy the thing. I'm certain there's always a risk. We'll ask our colleagues and we'll get you that information. So any opinion poll clearly will be only one arrow in your quiver as decision makers. I mean, you'll still no doubt be consulting with individual citizens, with groups. You'll get people calling you, etc. And at the end of the day, it may even rely on your gut as far as how this district proceeds from a bylaw perspective. So bearing that in mind, and we'll try to make this, again, if council directs that we do this, as valid and as reliable as possible, encapsulating those security concerns about it. It's not going to be perfect. It's just not.
But I mean, we're aiming for as close to accurate as possible. So what, since everyone has a mailing address in our community that lives here, presumably, the vast majority that are, you know.
And we would come back again, if so directed, with our suggestion as far as maximizing that reliability and validity and
Because
security.
mail it out, it would be hard to gauge how many are over the 18 and over to vote. Or in each household, that would be the hard part. So how many ballots do you mail per household? Because they would all be eligible. You want one per household? So then we could just do that through our main property tax system.
Yeah.
So, I think that we kind of, I'm getting the sense that we agree that we can, if people need to have a survey, fine. We already had a public hearing, so, but anyhow, I guess we can have a survey. The thing being is that, let's move the process along, let's not bedraggle it. So, let's have it done and over with by the end of September, so we can make some positive moves forward here.
Like survey back.
Yeah, survey back, analyze, how long can it take? Election voting doesn't take that long, I'm sure we can do this within a week.
Your worship, I would respectfully suggest that we come back to council with the draft survey to make sure it meets all of your expectations, with recommendations as far as distribution and the mechanism. The reason being that the process will be simple. I mean, it's the same basically as outlined in the Abbotsford poll as far as exploring options. We draft recommendations. You as decision makers take decisions. But I think we want to, again, ensure the safeguards that you wish to be in place. And we want to make sure that we avoid the issue of we put out a survey and then you as councillors individually or collectively aren't happy with the opinion survey we put out. That's why I suggest respectfully that we get it to you for the next council meeting for your endorsement. Again, answering some of the concerns that you have. And we'll have up to that point that you will communicate to us. And then we can get it done once ideally and as right as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. Councilor Medlock and Councilor.
So I appreciate you want to take that approach, but our next council meeting is not till September 24th. That's a long time from now, so I don't want to wait that long. Is there, and I'm hoping I'm right, that most of this is already here and we can just use it as far as questions for a survey go? Is anybody opposed to the questions in the Abbotsford survey? Can we not just do that, and if we need to hold we need the whole meeting to approve that before UBCM so that we're not meeting?
Well, like, the committee of the whole has a recommendation to council, only has no legal authority.
Right, so we couldn't do anything until our official council meeting.
Can we just have a special meeting?
That's frustrating.
I mean, I'm actually open to having a special meeting of council somewhere time as a regular schedule, just to get
First week of September.
David tucked away here.
Yeah, first week in September.
If it is council's wish that we use the same survey, basically tarted up with hope branding and whatnot,
That's right.
and get it out in a similar fashion that Abbotsford did. Ideally, was that survey on?
Because on the internet it says on.
Yeah, we would have to get details from them, how they did it, and if they can safeguard how many votes happen.
If that
If
proves,
not, we'd have to mail them.
if that proves possible, it is possible we could clearly get it done and maybe get feedback to you at the council meeting in September. We'd have to proceed fairly rapidly. However, I would caution though, if we find that there's going to be a problem with security or reliability, I would bring that to your attention.
But you're talking about an online survey only, correct? That would be
Right,
an online
if
survey.
you want it speedy, fast, that's
So for
likely.
folks, the large percentage of folks in our community who are seniors who may not be online, how do they express their opinion? How would that happen?
That's an issue, and that's again why I'm suggesting that we have a bit of a think about it, because like a lot of things, there are various communication channels, and not everyone is on each channel. So you've got to.
No, but we have to have a sort of a hard copy come into town hall, express your opinion.
That would always be there, your worship, yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably the easiest would be so that every household gets just mail up with a tax list. And then we have a fairly wide range of residents in the community. And just do that, whatever comes back, comes back.
And that may not capture your rental people unless we have it available by paper copy here.
But if we do a Canada Post mail out and deal with all mailing addresses have numbered opinion forms, that's gonna be pretty accurate. Because the
However, you're gonna capture your business community, and normally business residents aren't eligible for voting, but if you wanna capture them,
Well,
that would be
Sure.
fine.
honestly, not a problem with that, if I may.
yeah,
Clinton did that, they asked if they're representing, I think, a household or a business.
Yeah, we can do that. if
Not a bad
that's the
question, but
opinion of
I think
council.
businesses should have a say, because
Yeah.
it affects them.
And what would be the approximate cost?
Well, we'd have to approach Canada Post to see what it would cost, how many mailboxes there are, and either way, I mean. it's
Probably
really-
under
$100,000.
It would be under
Yeah.
1,000.
Probably, yeah.
So, and I mean, that's the best way to gauge your
That's pretty-
overall collective opinion. And then it will be up to people to mail them back or drop them off to us. And we're pretty central, so I think that's easy enough.
So we plagiarized the city of Abbotsford questionnaire, and no harm in that, so. And then the no copyright on that, and
We can add,
there's a mailing list.
and you like the additional question, do you support additional cost towards bylaw enforcement? We can add that.
No, I don't.
Okay, Councillor Dunn?
Just a comment, so simultaneously as this is happening, since the next meeting is until the 24th of September, can we not have a draft policy in place that's presented somewhat at the September 24th meeting as well, so that we're sort of doing two things at one time?
Just to clarify, Your Worship, draft policy or draft bylaw?
It's going to be a matter of bylaws.
There's, yeah, more than one affected.
Well, I think the other thing too is it's kind of hard to pre-draft something that may prejudge the outcome of the survey, so.
It's very likely, Your Worship, that by the time all the dust settles, the new council with the new mandate will ultimately decide the issue because of everything that's, like, all the bylaws that are impacted.
But at least the homework's been done then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have the survey results to look at.
Yeah.
the bylaws.
Okay. So we have that in motion form, I guess would be the question.
Sure, I'll move that.
Okay.
What's the timeline?
Pardon?
What's your timeline?
Well, I'd really like to see that survey out and done, and if we have to have a special meeting in the middle to accommodate the final draft of what you're sending out, or a phone poll, or an email poll, or something. Let's get a move on.
So are you happy with the Abbotsford one, and just adding that question, and if they give us permission to use it, just proceed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, looking at the dates here, you know, you got Brigade Days coming up, and then right after that's UBCM, so could we have a meeting on the 5th or 6th? Well, the 5th is council orientation.
That's what council would.
The 6th to ratify something so it can get sent out the following week. I'm just looking at shortening the timeline as much as possible.
If you have given us direction, basically the Abbotsford poll with one or two added questions that are clearly defined, I mean, we can follow that direction. And we would, I think that would work and should meet expectations if you're willing to do
Could we
that.
ratify that at the council meeting tonight?
You could, right, add it to the agenda at the regular issue and
I like that idea.
resolve and direct that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Move forward tonight.
Sounds good. Let's do that.
So would the motion be that you direct staff to proceed with the Abbotsford poll with the additional question?
Yeah.
And I think what's important too, that we put it in an envelope and put your opinion matters, important information inside or something, because if it's just junk mail in a post office box, we'll get nothing back, because everyone throws it in the recycling, that's that. But if it's on it's district envelope, hopefully the folks will pay attention to it, and then they can go through it, because it was just, you know, in the mishmash of advertising, it's never gonna be.
With a return date to council for that meeting in later September with the results that we've collated today.
Okay, so.
And can we encourage a drop off at district hall?
Well, we'll figure the mechanics out, and it may just be that, but we
That might be
understand
the easiest way to make it happen, otherwise if it gets stuck in the mail.
Yep.
I mean, that would only delay things a couple days, because local mail is almost instant, but still.
So their deadline on the survey is which date? To have it returned by?
We haven't decided yet.
Oh,
I would suggest, yeah. If it went out as early as next week, have 2 weeks to vote for it, so have them returned by, say, the 19th or something like that, that gives a few days to kind of compile
We can manually answer count all those votes, so
Yeah, I mean,
it's time.
I don't think
Depends on the year,
Yeah, yeah.
Can you do like a scan form kind of thing, like the schools use, just borrow their equipment and, no, like they have those, you know, for tests. Can you just,
Fill in the dot.
You have to not get a special permit.
yeah, I don't know how it works, I just thought it might be easy to
I
do.
think, your worship, so the questions don't necessarily all of them lead to a yes or a no. For example, how far would you like to see retailers separated from each other? Or how far would you like to see them from a school?
Open-ended questions,
There
yeah.
there are qualitative answers that need to be.
Some will be, yeah. Okay, so what is our motion now? How does it sound?
Direct staff to proceed with the Abbotsford poll with, I have the one additional question.
I think the, are you a business
Or
or
resident.
resident?
Two additional questions.
With staff to return with the September 26th meeting?
24.
With the collated data collected.
Well, later, that's the key. So, we need to make sure that the, return by date isn't too long, otherwise we won't get it correlated.
Absolutely.
So that's the key.
We'll figure it
We'll
out.
make it happen, number two.
So what I suggest, Your Worship, is that when the regular meeting starts, we amend the agenda to include that point, and you can pass a formal resolution to the staff.
There's a support for committee reports under section 6.
So we didn't vote on that, but anyhow.
Well, we should. I think we're almost done discussion on that.
Have a mover.
Additional discussion, we have a seconder.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. And I think item B, then will be a quick one to tuck away. As council recollects, there was a move afoot to get a citizens committee to do a review of council indemnity. And I guess due to the summer months, there was one gentleman from town who was involved in the chamber who kindly put his name forward, but there were no others, so I think we'll probably just, be my recommendation that we leave this one alone and leave it for the next council to visit if they so choose. If that works for everyone around the table. Okay, sure. Okay, we'll close the committee meeting. And maybe a 2-minute break here if anyone needs to go to the washroom, and then we'll hit the council.